My name is Johnny Johnny, and this is Live with Johnny Johnny. Let's get right into it. Y'all know I've been preaching since like last summer. The things that's been coming down as far as the racial divide and stuff like that. My thing is I didn't think it would get this bad this quick. I thought this would take some years and years to take place. Now, with saying that, I also knew about Project 2025 and how aggressively they was going to go to try to get Project 2025 passed before the next election. Like, this stuff has to be done before the next election. Otherwise, if they start getting subpoenaed, if they start going to court, they'll get locked up for the crimes that they're doing right now. So they have to make sure that Project 2025 is complete and done by November before we vote again. If that happens, we probably won't even be able to get a chance to vote again because that's the whole thing is to take our rights away. And that's definitely what you're seeing. A lot of people don't know that when they hit the DEI, it's like 300,000 black females got fired. I'm gonna say that again: 300,000 black females got fired immediately for DEI. So, and there's some of the most educated people here in America. So, for them to get fired, that already goes to show you and set a precedent that any of us can get it. Because a lot of us don't even have much education. I do have a degree, but a lot of black men don't even have a degree. So we don't have a leg to stand on. But I want y'all to see this video, and it talks about how like the Supreme Court just erased our rights, especially in the South. You talking about Texas, you're talking about Memphis, you're talking about Tennessee, and the crazy part about it is you got a lot of black people who are starting to migrate back to the South, and this is what they're migrating back to. When you left the South, you left for racism. Now you're returning right back to racism. That's insane. So check this out, y'all, and then y'all let me know y'all thoughts.
While nobody was paying attention, the Supreme Court just absolutely obliterated and nuked black voting rights in this country. This is the biggest rollback of black voting rights in this country in my lifetime. In my lifetime. I mean, they are actually trying to roll the clock back to, pre-1960s type fucking red
That's
line,
crazy, yeah.
Jim Crow, segregation type stuff. They want to take away representation. They want taxation without representation when it comes to minority communities. This is insane what we're talking about here.
Okay,
so Democracy Doc says the following. Breaking. The Supreme Court just fast-tracked its ruling in Louisiana versus Calais, clearing the way for Louisiana to gerrymander its congressional map mid-election after previously warning courts not to change rules close to elections. In other words, this is the MAGA Supreme Court rushing in at the last second to chuck up a buzzer beater to try to help Republicans rig the midterms. That's what this is. And in the process of doing that, absolutely destroying the rights of black Americans and minority Americans. So what happened in this case is Louisiana basically is making a second Democratic congressional district. They had one. They're making it two because the population has grown. And the Supreme Court looked at this and said, no, you're doing this. You're doing a racial gerrymander along racial lines. So we're wiping out that map and we're having the maps be redrawn to represent black voters less. It's the classic, like, your attempt to make things equal, your attempt to stop the racists is actually racist. That's their argument. Is like, no, you have to let the Republican white racists do what they want and, take away the representation for black people. And that's how it's fair. This is like the argument, unironically, this is like the argument that they're making. Okay, more. Democracy Docket says, by the time Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry suspended ongoing elections to give lawmakers time to redraw the state's congressional map, roughly 42,000 Louisianans already cast their votes, and it's likely many voted in the House primaries. Now, their ballots are at risk of being thrown out. So 42,000 people cast ballots. And because of the Supreme Court here, it looks like those ballots are just going to be fucking tossed out, and they're like canceling an election and redoing an election on more favorable terms to the Republicans. For the life of me, I don't understand why more people aren't talking about this. This is insane. What we're talking about here is absolutely positively insane. So Jen Rice says, this is insane. Even if you are too tired to follow the news, you have to understand this. The Louisiana governor has suspended an active congressional election with 42,000 votes already cast. That is so fucking crazy, bro. That's so crazy. New, Trump's DOJ is preparing to weaponize the Supreme Court's gutting of the Voting Rights Act and challenge maps that protect Black and Latino voters, starting with California. So the Supreme Court opens up the door here and says, yeah, any districts that are drawn to protect Black people's rights and give them a say and give them a vote and give them a voice, those are actually racist. Even though the whole point was like an attempt to make things more equal and fix racism, they go, no, those are actually racist. And so the Supreme Court opens up the door to basically smash up all those districts and hand all the power back to white Republicans, right? And then they do this. So the second the Supreme Court makes the decision, boom. Trump's Department of Justice is on top of it immediately. They basically were waiting for this decision, and they are going to fucking take a sledgehammer to Black districts. The Supreme Court issued the Calais ruling this morning. By afternoon, a Republican senator had sent a letter to the DOJ demanding a nationwide review of minority-drawn districts. Within minutes, Harmeet Dillon, who runs the DOJ Civil Rights Division, replied publicly, "Senator, we are on it." Read that sequence again. The department that exists to enforce civil rights law is now using the law's gutting to go after the districts that law produced. Schmidt's letter asked the DOJ to do four things: issue guidance implementing the ruling, reopen every existing Section 2 redistricting case, compile a nationwide list of districts drawn with race as a factor, and give California's congressional map immediate review. The Trump DOJ had already tried to block that map in court and lost. Calais is the new legal pathway to try again. If you are a Black or Latino voter who lives in a majority-minority district anywhere in the country, the federal government is now compiling a list that may include your district. The agency that was supposed to protect your right to representation is the one building it. The ruling dropped this morning. Dillon replied this afternoon, that is how fast this moved. That is fucking crazy, bro. That is crazy. So now, like, to sum this up in simple terms, what they're trying to do effectively is create their own version of an electoral college, but for the House of Representatives. Basically, bias it against minority voters, take away their representation, basically right-wing and Republican gerrymander stuff, and get away with that. So roll the clock back and give Republicans like a solid, 20-seat, 25-seat cushion in the House of Representatives permanently. That's what they're doing. So at a moment where MAGA and the Republican Party are just like nuking the Republican Party for an entire generation here, you have the Supreme Court rushing in to effectively cheat for them, rig it for them, give them like a head start. And that's where we are. The fact that we're even having this conversation in 2026 should be a real eye-opening moment to everybody, right? I mean, I think in the same way that the overturning of Roe v. Wade was sort of an eye-opening moment for everybody, where we went, hold on, we were always told that, the moral arc of history is long, but it bends towards justice. Well, it turns out that's fake. That's not real. That the arc bends in whichever way society bends it. And if the Republicans take power and right-wingers take power and they fight for their perspectives and they rig the systems, then it's going to bend in their direction. And so now, not only have we rolled back abortion rights, now you're also rolling back minority voting rights. This is completely and utterly unacceptable. And we need to fight back with everything we fucking have against this shit. Now, at the same time, New York Times here. Red flag, the Trump Justice